Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. This is one of my absolute favorite times of year to fish, a small little tungsten jig, just like this guy right here. I'm talking about this pre-spawn period where you've got water temps that are on the rise from the low 50s up until really the 60-degree range when the fish start to move up onto beds. But a tungsten little finesse jig can be such a valuable tool in not only catching big fish, but catching numbers of fish. And it works for all three major species of bass, your spotted bass, largemouth, smallmouth. They will all eat a little tungsten jig. So that's what I want to break down today. I want to share with you kind of the jigs that I like to use, where I like to fish them, and why they work. But before I do get into that, I want to remind you that if you're looking to support the channel and need to purchase some tackle, please use my Tackle Warehouse affiliate link. I'll put that in the video description for you. And if you're looking for more content from me, make sure you check out my members only page. We do additional monthly videos. We've got a monthly live stream for members only, and you can have direct access to me to ask me your questions. So from that standpoint, check that out. You can go to my homepage, click the join button, get all the information there. All right, so let's talk little finesse jigs. So this is something that for me was not in my wheelhouse for quite some time. Now what I mean by that is I always have been a jig fisherman. One of the first baits I started throwing when I was a little kid. Absolutely loved jigs. Never thought there was a need for tungsten. I ended up going to a tournament on Beaver Lake that was then followed up shortly by another tournament on Lake Travis down in Austin, Texas. And what I quickly realized was the power of a tungsten compact jig, a little finesse jig at that time. And what I mean by that is I went there knowing guys were catching fish on jigs. I went ahead, fished the normal jigs that I was throwing, traditional lead head style jigs. Did not have much success at all. Got my tail kicked in by guys that were catching them on jigs. And I went, how could that be? I fished the jig in the same areas. I watched the videos of what they were doing. Well, what I came to find out was they were throwing tungsten jigs. And the reason they were working so much better than the jigs that I was throwing wasn't necessarily the small, compact size of the ones, but it really had to do with the tungsten head. And there's a couple of reasons for that. First and foremost, they were all fishing on lakes that were primarily rock-based. So if you know anything about the Ozarks region, lots of rock. Lake Travis down in Texas, pretty much a canyon-style lake. So you're talking about lots and lots of rock. Well, when you got rock, your tungsten heads creates a much different sound than your lead head style. A tungsten head is a much more high-pitched sound. Tungsten's more of a dull thud. To me, that is the single most important thing anytime I'm fishing around rock. If I've got rock and I'm fishing those areas, I'm throwing a tungsten head. And this works not just for jigs, it works for shaky heads, any of your bottom style baits. And it's that louder, high-pitched sound that seems to draw the attention from fish. Since getting my butt kicked in, this was probably 10, 12 years ago at this point, I have pretty much made the switch to tungsten jigs under those conditions where I'm fishing more rock banks. And my success rate has gone through the roof. Now, that's not the only positive to a tungsten. With a tungsten, you also get a much smaller profile head. That gives the bait a much more streamlined look. It generally produces more bites when you're talking about fishing during the cold water period, where fish can be more lethargic and therefore not that much more willing to bite your baits. At the same time, you've also got a bait that's got more sensitivity. So anytime you're fishing those hard bottom areas, your tungsten head is going to relay that feel back to you better. So you're going to have a better feel for where your bait's at. That also will help you control the bait, therefore put it in the areas where the fish are living, catch more fish. Now, having said that, there is one major negative aspect to a tungsten jig. That's the price point. They generally are going to be double the cost of a lead jig. Now, in my opinion, I'm happy to pay a few bucks more to get more bites. But I understand that they are more expensive from that standpoint. All right, so some of the areas where I love to throw the tungsten jigs, as I mentioned, it's hard bottom areas. But more specifically, your channel swing banks. or a rock transition bank. So a bank where maybe you go from just small gravel or sand to a bigger rock. Any of those transition zones are going to be really good. A lot of times those are channel swing banks. Your bluff banks or stair-stepping rock style banks are going to be great ones to fish them on. Offshore shell beds, offshore gravel bars, or rock humps, those are great places to fish them. Or if you've got a point that maybe has a hard spot on it, those are all key places. Now keep in mind, it's that hard spot that's going to create contact, create sound for that tungsten jig. Therefore, that's going to be the drawing power to that bait. So for me, if I'm fishing those areas, that type of water, I'm going with the tungsten. If I'm fishing a jig more in traditional jig fishing areas, which might be flipping lay down trees, skipping under docks, areas where I don't necessarily have the same hard bottom, I don't necessarily feel like I need to go with the tungsten. I don't think I'm going to generate any more bites by throwing the tungsten. And in some instances, you will actually run into getting more snags if you fish tungsten around, say, trees, because you do have a smaller profile jig. It can get wedged into more areas. It can be a detriment to you. But again, for me, it solely comes down to bottom composition. Hard bottom, I go with tungsten, makes a big difference. Now, if we're talking about some of my favorite small tungsten jigs, there's a handful of them. One, this guy right here, this is a little spotty Picasso tungsten jig with the titanium weed guard on the front, real light wire weed guard. Great bait, it just catching all kinds of fish. Like I said, all the bass species eat it. One of the trailers I love is just a little 3-inch Berkeley Pit Boss on the bottom. That's an absolute phenomenal one. If you watch my channel, you know how much I like this guy too. This is a Kitech casting jig. This is one of my favorites. A lot of times I'll actually pull the weed guards out of all of these jigs, specifically if they come more with the fiber one, because you tend to not get as good of hookups because these small compact jigs do a lot of times have smaller hooks in them. So if you can get away with not fishing a weed guard, a lot of times I'll just take them right off. And then another really good trailer on them is just a little chunk style trailer on the back. This is a Zoom Super Chunk Junior size trailer. This is an absolute killer bait. This one specifically, peanut butter and jelly. If you live out on the West Coast and fish places like Lake Mead, you might want to be throwing this exact jig. And then another one that I really like that I've done videos on in the past, and this isn't necessarily a straight up jig, but to me it is a jig. I like to take a Yamamoto Hula Grub, just like this guy. This is the 5-inch size, and then I'll put it on a tungsten football head jig. This is another Picasso style tungsten jig. It's a weedless one, so you can thread that on and fish a Hula Grub very much as a finesse style jig as well. Fish it through those same areas. Keep it simple though. I'm telling you, when it comes to choosing the right jig, if you're fishing hard, rocky type areas, go with tungsten. It will generate more bites for you. This is something that I learned the hard way a long time ago, and at this point now, it is a hard, fast rule in my boat that I'm fishing tungsten when I'm fishing hard bottom areas. So thanks for watching, guys. Let me know in the comments section, what are your favorite tungsten jigs out there? I'd love to hear from you. Always looking to try more jigs, so put it up there so I can see from you guys and learn from you guys as well. Otherwise, thanks for watching. I appreciate all of the support, and stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow.